Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to day 3 of Ramadan Transformation Challenge. I want to start by congratulating you for being here, because that means that you have watched the roadmap video, that you've gone through day 2's training on clarity, and that's a big deal. It's great, because the truth is that most people who join any challenge or a course, they usually only ever go through the first or second video and never really go through the rest of the training. But the fact that you are here, it tells me that you deeply care about your personal growth, and that you know, as I do, that there is no one who better loves and wants for you to succeed and who can better coach you to success than He subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created you, who knows best your potential and how to fulfill it. And that there's no better way of gaining His guidance on this than through His very own words of the Quran, alhamdulillah. You being here today, it shows me that you know, as I do, that in order for us to have or do or be more, that we really need to be focused on our continual learning and essentially do the work. So well done. It's an honor to be reconnecting with you today, alhamdulillah. Okay, so let's start off as always by reconnecting in the chat below. Please tell me, who do we have joining us again today? Share your name, where you're tuning in from, and what you are most excited about for today as we tackle that game-changing topic of energy. I'd love to hear from you, inshallah. Okay, so today is hugely important, right? Because you can have a great mindset and perspective going into Ramadan as we developed on day 1. You can have all the clarity that you need around your goals moving forward as we focused on in day 2. But if you don't have the physical energy to be able to show up and do the work, if you don't have the mental energy to stay focused and present on what you need to, if you don't have the emotional energy to drive you forward, then you simply won't be able to act on those amazing intentions that you have for Ramadan, right? And see your Ramadan goals through. And as a result of that, we're often left struggling with feelings of sadness or frustration or guilt as Ramadan has passed us by and we didn't get to do as much as we wanted to because our bodies was not able to keep up with us, right? But it was actually holding us back. And even when we do manage to force ourselves to do some good deeds in Ramadan by having this, just do it approach, not only is that not sustainable and it's not healthy for you, but it doesn't actually mean that those acts that we've done is done with any enjoyment, first and foremost, and that it's not done with any ihsan. And that's a big deal because as Muslims, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He values quality over quantity, right? And what's the most frustrating thing of all is that this is all avoidable. It didn't have to be this way. Should we have approached the way that we think about energy and the practices and habits that we build in relation to it were different. So if you have ever gone through Ramadan lacking that vibrancy and vitality to carry out the needle-moving tasks you needed because of those long hours of fasting and less hours of sleep as you engage in ibadah, and it completely left your body totally burnt out. Or for you, if you've ever felt mentally drained, right? Trying to juggle your busy life on top of all those additional demands of Ramadan, that you were just left with brain fog and your mind just felt fried. Or if you've ever felt emotionally depleted, as everything just felt way too much, then you're in the right place, alhamdulillah, because today we are going to be firstly uncovering the biggest mistake that people make that negatively impacts their energy levels and how we can completely shift that in a way that best serves us, inshallah. And then we're going to also go on to exploring some amazing Quranic strategies and tools to transform the way that we think about and that we approach as well our physical energy, our mental energy, and our emotional energy too. And I hope, inshallah, that collectively all of this will help serve you to 10x your Ramadan performance, inshallah, and really make the most of this month. So if you are ready with your pen and paper, if you're ready to engage in the chat roll down below, sharing all your best takeaways as we go along, then please drop me a thumbs up in the chat roll below and then we'll dive straight in, inshallah. Great, alhamdulillah. Okay, so I want to first start by sharing with you the biggest mistake that I see people make in the way that they think about and the way that they approach their energy, and then share with you a far more powerful and beneficial way to look at energy, inshallah. Okay, so what's this common mistake? Well, despite a lot of people knowing the very intense demands that Ramadan can have on our energy levels, many people usually still make that big mistake of going into Ramadan just kind of hoping to wing it. They usually think that that external buzz that's created around them at the start of Ramadan with that very refreshing change in atmosphere, where, for example, we're going late night prayers amongst crowds of people for Taraweeh, where we're regularly attending and hosting iftars with friends and family and neighbors. They think that this seasonal breath of fresh air, that's sufficient in keeping them going and keeping them energized throughout the whole month of Ramadan. They treat it a bit like a dose of caffeine that they think is going to last 30 days somehow. But the reality is that winging it by just relying on that external buzz of Ramadan at the start, this just isn't enough. Because although, yes, it can help to maybe inject some drive at the start of Ramadan, it can help you hit the floor running, so to speak, it's not something that in and of itself that you'll be able to sustain, and it will be able to help you consistently perform and deliver at your highest levels for that entire month. And that's why you'll typically find a lot of people experiencing what's commonly known as that Ramadan dip, right? Or why by the time the last 10 days of Ramadan come by, when we actually need to be on our A game, we actually struggle the most, right? And that's also why by the time the day of Eid arrives, the only thing keeping most of us functioning is typically our overdose on sugar and caffeine that we are consuming as we overindulge on Eid treats. Am I right? But you see, the thing is, we don't have to wing it. We don't have to just hope to have energy, because the reality is, and listen very carefully, because this actually goes against popular belief. Energy isn't something that we either have or we don't, but it's something that we actually generate. Let me say that again. Yes, energy isn't something that we have or we don't, but it's something that we can generate. And a wonderful analogy to remind us of that reality is that of a power plant. Because, a power plant doesn't have energy, but it generates it, right? What a power plant actually does is that it takes from different sources, whether that's water or spinning turbines, nuclear, and then it transforms and generates that into a higher level of energy, which it then transmits. And the same goes for us. We don't have to simply just hope to have some energy, but we can generate it, inshallah, for ourselves on demand by more strategically approaching the different sources that we engage in and take from, whether that's in relation to our food, our environment, the routines that we have. We have to essentially become more strategic about our self-care. And we need to do so in a way with increased intention and discipline, inshallah, if we really want to transform our Ramadan experiences. Okay, so with that said, how do I think about and how do I approach my energy levels? Because it can be very tiring for me as a mother of multiple small children, taking care of their physical needs, emotional, spiritual needs, with the demand of the household as well, like cooking and cleaning, with homeschooling my children, with running Quran growth as well, where I need to see to my students and my clients, alongside a lot of my own personal studies as well. So how do I manage my own energy levels? Well, I'm going to be sharing with you today, inshallah, some amazing Quranic strategies and tools that help me generate the important levels of energy that I need and that serve me really well in Ramadan as well. I actually use these in my day-to-day life, in fact. And I hope, inshallah, by sharing these with you, that they will also transform the way that you approach and generate your energy, and that they'll help you 10x your Ramadan performance, inshallah. So for the rest of today's training, we're going to be dividing it into 3 sections, where we are going to be speaking about our emotional energy, first and foremost, then followed by our mental energy, and then lastly, we're going to be speaking about our physical energy levels too, bi'idhnillah. But before we dive into these wonderful Quranic strategies and tools, why not just take a moment here to pause this video and let me know in the chat roll down below, which of these forms of energy do you personally struggle with the most in Ramadan? Is it your physical energy, your emotional energy, or your mental energy? Yes, I know they're all interconnected and they typically impact one another as a result, but usually there's one area that we struggle with more than others, and often over time that has a knock-on effect on the other forms of energy. So have a think about it now, inshallah, and vote down in the chat roll below, which form of energy do you struggle with the most in Ramadan? Okay, so I want to start by exploring the subject of energy by addressing our emotional energy to begin with. And that is a great place to start because emotions, by definition, are energy in motion. It comes from the Latin word emovere, which means to push. Because, our emotions are what essentially and fundamentally move us in all areas of our life. They are what underlie every single decision and action that we take. They are what are actually key to transformative action, as we explored on day one's training. Do you remember that interesting analogy that I shared with you on day one of that medical student who smoked despite knowing that it was unhealthy, right? How he could confidently smoke in front of his professor, but when it came to his dad, where there were a set of different emotions at play of fear and respect, his behavior totally changed, right? In trying to hide his cigarette, isn't it? So if we want to ensure that we are able to show up with the positive emotional drive to push us towards our goals, then we need to take a deeper look into our emotional states. It's a must. And it's also important to look into because, the reality is that many of us will unfortunately be heading into Ramadan with already very withering levels of emotional energy. Because we all have our own challenges and difficulty in life, right? That's part of Hayat ad-Dunya. And perhaps now more than ever with increasing uncertainty faced by more and more people around the world, whether that's because of global political shifts or financial changes in our economy. And on top of all of that, even subhanAllah, we are now more exposed than ever to the suffering of others around the world. And that can deeply impact our emotional well-being and our emotional energy, right? So all of that fear, that frustration, that grief, all of the emotional stress and turmoil that we experience day to day and that we experience in the life of others too, this will naturally impact our emotional energy and therefore impact our performance as well, what we're able to actually achieve in Ramadan. Okay, so although we said emotions are what actually move us in all areas of our life, the question that we constantly have to ask ourselves is, do we like the way we're moving? Does our energy help us to positively drive us forward towards growth and development? So in a way where we feel safe and in control, balanced and in flow? Or are your emotions actually very chaotic and dysregulating, where you feel unsafe with little or no control, where you feel out of balance, overwhelmed, helpless, kind of in survival mode, either mobilized in fight or flight or immobilized, completely shutting down? Well, what's really interesting is those two states that I just described to you are actually both classified as stress, believe it or not. They're just different forms of stress. Yes, when you are in flow, when you are on your A game and you're crushing it, you're leveling up, it actually takes a healthy type of stress to move you in these kind of progressive ways. It's called eustress. And that's actually scientifically been proven to be healthy for you. But when this stress is dysregulating, as I described, it's called distress. And it's been proved to be very harmful for your well-being and your health. And a very beautiful example of these two different types of stress can be seen in the chasing between a cheetah and a gazelle. The stress that's experienced by the cheetah is one of challenge, and whereas the stress of the gazelle is one of threat, right? So both are experiencing stress. One is eustress and the other is distress. So although both of these animals are moving in that scene, the emotional experience is a very different one for each of them, isn't it? Okay, so how can we ensure that we are experiencing more eustress instead of distress in our daily lives to ensure that we possess the emotional energy we need to positively move us towards our fulfilling our Ramadan goals and making the most of that month? Well, I'm about to share with you something that when I learned it, wallahi, it totally transformed how I thought and how I even experienced stress in my life forever. So what is that? Well, stress, it comes from the Latin word stingere, meaning to narrow or tighten. So there's this tension, this pressure, this disruption. But a tension between what exactly? Well, essentially, it comes down to a tension between the perceived demands that we have in our life versus our perceived resources in our life. The demands that we have in our life, meaning that, our duties, the responsibilities that we have, the commitments, they take from us, right? So they bring a sense of threat and they can therefore make us feel unsafe. Whereas our resources, they help us to feel safe. as we feel that we have what we need to navigate through those challenging demands. So our emotions, they are constantly measuring and assessing to see the current levels of safety that we have or we don't, based on our perception of our demands versus our resources. And so they place us into either regulation or dysregulation as a result. Not because our emotions want to dysregulate us, by the way, but that's how they draw our attention, right? Moving us to take the necessary action to bring us back to regulation. So they're in fact actually helping, just to make that clear. Now, with that said, what can we do to help us manage our perception of our demands versus our resources then, to help us stay more regulated and experience eustress as opposed to being dysregulated, experiencing more distress? Well, the first thing that I personally do when I'm feeling distress is I take a moment to sit down, I take a couple of deep breaths, and I remind myself of this underlying reality. So I tell myself, okay, Halimah, you're feeling this distress right now. Let's sit with that for a moment. It must be because of the way that I'm viewing my perceived demands outweighing the resources that I have to handle those demands. And I like to immediately remind myself of some ayat in the Quran that are relevant to my perception on that matter. And I do all of this using a tool that I created called a Quranic dashboard. Now, a Quranic dashboard is basically a list of specific Quranic verses related to a specific subject that serve as this kind of mental or even a physical dashboard. So it reminds me of ayat that positively shape my thinking and psychology on the reality of a subject as talked about by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they act as this kind of pair of reality glasses, if you like, from which to see things more clearly. And they often act as a trigger as well to approach things in a certain way towards certain actions. So these are verses that you can regularly refer to by having them either written down, for example, that you can read in your journal, that you can recite out loud to yourself, or you can even have them on an audio to listen to when you need to, like on your phone, for example. So for me, for example, with any of my Quranic dashboards that I have, whether it's this one for managing stress or for managing confidence or whatever it might be. I mean, I personally have Quranic dashboards for almost everything in my life. No exaggeration. For me, I like to have them on audio saved on my smartwatch, which I listen to on demand whenever I need, because they're all categorized and they're all named on there. Okay, so which Quranic verses do I place on my Quranic dashboard for stress then, to help me with my perceived resources versus my demands? Well, I like to include ayat like
لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها.
I also include ayat like
ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج ولكن يريد ليطهركم وليتم نعمته عليكم لعلكم تشكرون.
Another example of a Quranic ayah I have in my Quranic dashboard for stress is
فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا.
I also include ayat like
ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا.
Another example of a Quranic ayah I like to include in my Quranic dashboard for stress is
وما من دابة في الأرض إلا على الله رزقها ويعلم مستقرها ومستودعها كل في كتاب مبين.
And I also have ayat like
تولج الليل في النهار وتولج النهار في الليل وتخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت من الحي وترزق من تشاء بغير حساب.
So in reminding myself of such ayat on my Quranic dashboard, I instantly begin feeling a reduction in the pressure of my demands and a positive increase in the perception of my resources, all which help to better regulate myself, reducing those feelings of distress. And I actually like to personally add the practice here of some strategic questions as well. And remember, we spoke about the power of strategic questions in Days 2's training, right? So I like to use those questions to enforce the perception and the mindset and the beliefs that are shaped by these ayat on my Quranic dashboard. So I like to ask myself questions, for example, like, who from my network of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me to have contact with, who can I reach out to ask for help and support from today in this matter? Who do I need to connect with? For you, it might be a family member, it might be a friend, a mentor, maybe a support group of some kind. And I also like to ask myself the question of, what 5 tools or resources do I have access to right now that can help to better support me in effectively addressing this demand, reducing this threatening pressure that I have? So for you, it could be a library card. So you can go to the library and get a book to help you on this matter. Maybe for you, it's an online course that you previously purchased, but you actually never finished. Maybe for you, it's a software like ChatGPT, for example. I've actually included for you more Quranic verses and more strategic questions that you can ask yourself, inshallah, in your action journals down below. Now, to end this tool here for improving your emotional energy, let me know in the chat roll down below, how would you like to incorporate a Quranic dashboard for stress in your personal life starting this Ramadan? What form would it take for you? Where would you place it? How would you remind yourself to engage with it in moments of distress? So pause this video here, take a moment to have a think and write that down, and then let me know in the chat roll down below. I would love to hear from you, inshallah. Okay, so let's move on to our mental energy next. Because if you don't have the mental energy and the capacity to stay focused and to be able to be present, even if you think you're emotionally and physically okay, it's going to impact you, remember, because our mental, emotional, and our physical energy, they are all interconnected. And when one begins to deplete, the other forms of energy will be impacted and start to deplete too. Okay, so with that said, I have for you 3 different Quranic tools and practices to help you increase your mental energy levels, inshallah, going into Ramadan. And the first one is to consistently connect with your Ramadan mission. Because a lot of people don't realize that having clarity on your purpose and on your goals is one of the greatest sources of mental energy that we have. This is why we actually spent a whole of the day 1 and day 2 of our training at the beginning of this challenge just focusing on building that clarity and that mindset, right? If you've watched those videos, if you downloaded and completed the worksheets, you should now have greater clarity on many things, mashallah. From what you are ultimately seeking behind every goal you ever set for yourself, the greatest tool you have at your disposal for growth and transformation, the purpose of Ramadan, for example, how to best approach your Quran-related goals, and by now even a bit more clarity on which Quran heart goals you might want to focus on this Ramadan, inshallah. And if that's the case, then I celebrate you. That is awesome, mashallah, tabarakallah. If, however, you missed those videos for some reason, or you didn't manage to complete those worksheets, then I highly recommend you pause this video here, you go back to day 1 and 2 training, inshallah, and do the work. Because you will see for yourself how powerful and energizing it is to have clarity on those important things that relate to that bigger picture and your identity even. Okay, so once you have that mission and the goals that you want to work on clarified for yourself, what's really vital is that you connect with that bigger picture mentally every single day in Ramadan, and that B, you also connect with it practically speaking. So you do something towards that mission daily. Because please realize that by connecting to your Ramadan goals mentally every day, you are creating meaning. And by practically connecting to it, contributing to it in a practical way every day, you're creating momentum. And both meaning and momentum are key to generating your mental energy levels. The Quran illustrates the importance of meaning and momentum to energizing us mentally through the fact that the Quran, it's a source of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's consistent reminders to us of our bigger life mission and purpose, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then consistently calls us to that reminder 5 times a day through the practical action of salah. As it's the Quran that we're primarily reciting in our prayers, right? And as a result of that meaning and that momentum built here, we gain a lot of mental energy from this form of ibadah throughout our day, isn't it? Now, when it comes to instilling meaning and momentum with your Ramadan goals, there's lots of different ways about it. Connecting with your goals and mission daily can be done physically by writing them down, or you can type them up, for example, and stick that in your journal, or you can stick it on your computer, a mirror, or a fridge, for example, or you might prefer to have them represented in images instead of words if you're quite a visual person, so a bit like a vision board instead. For you, you might prefer to have that purpose and those goals as a screensaver on your phone even. It's really up to you. However and wherever you choose to place this reminder, just make sure that you can visually see it daily during Ramadan, and preferably first thing in the morning, so that you can really have the right focus and mind frame to drive you forward into conquering each day, inshallah. And one great way of practically engaging with it and ensuring that you are contributing to that mission every day is through the use of strategic questions. You can ask yourself questions like, what is one action I can take today to significantly move me forward to my goals? Or what 3 things need to happen today to push me towards that bigger vision I have? You know, the energy that's generated from having meaning and momentum will really prevent you from simply just going through the motions this Ramadan. And it will allow you to live each day of Ramadan more intentional, more present. And that gives you a far better chance at achieving that positive change you're seeking in your life during Ramadan, inshallah. So why not pause this video here and let me know in the chat roll down below, how would you best like to apply this strategy in your daily routine moving forward of connecting with your Ramadan mission? Or if you perhaps already have a similar habit, why not share with us in the chat roll your best practices for us all to learn and benefit from, inshallah. You know, we'd love to hear what kind of value you have to share. Remember, we're here as a community and shared learning is a great path to growth. Okay, so let's now move on to the second tool for increasing your mental energy levels that you should be aware of going into Ramadan. And that relates to your physical environment. You know, it's fascinating that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks about the environment within which He placed us, so the earth that He subhanahu wa ta'ala created for us to dwell in, He subhanahu wa ta'ala consistently highlights 2 things to draw to our attention to and to be appreciative of. The first thing is the beauty of order. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions how He created everything with perfect measure, how everything is balanced and every system operates to perfection. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala also points out to us the aesthetic beauty of the earth and what He created in it for us. And you know, it's these 2 forms of beauty that science now explains has a massive impact on our mind and on our mental energy levels too, subhanAllah. And this doesn't just relate to the macro level, by the way, but even the micro level too. Because our personal spaces at home or our workplace, for example, they can equally affect our mental energy levels as well. And so this is something that we should be very wary of going into Ramadan, inshallah. You know, science has now proven that having a very clean, clutter-free, aesthetically pleasing space to live in and to work in, it really does affect our mental well-being and our energy levels. And I know there's going to be a lot of mums listening, nodding their head, that's true. And as a result of all this, that will naturally affect our output too. So what actions we take, what we achieve, subhanAllah. So why not start thinking about your personal living and working spaces in the run-up to Ramadan? Is there any particular spaces, maybe inside your home, your office, or your car even, that you know in the back of your mind it needs to be cleaned or decluttered before Ramadan comes around? So that you can feel free from that frustrating, nagging, unconscious mind of yours that doesn't allow you to forget these things that have now become the bottom of your list of priorities. Because we all know that those nagging reminders are only going to come to the forefront of our minds when we least want them, right? Like when we're praying or spending time reading Quran, etc. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? So have a think. Could you maybe schedule some time to go and purchase some storage boxes that you can use to help clear your environment? Or you can maybe perhaps purchase a few small items that could really make the spaces that you live or work in feel a lot more aesthetically beautiful, relaxing, or energizing. Could you find the time to go to the car wash and get someone on your behalf to go and clean it for you? You know, in your worksheets down below that you can download, I've included for you a list of potential things that you can think about in regards to your environment that could actually help you stay energized, inshallah, and more focused during Ramadan. Okay, before we move on to the third tool for increasing your mental energy, please tell me in the chat roll down below, what is one space in your life you feel you could benefit from decluttering in some way or aesthetically amplifying or improving it somehow that you could pay a little bit attention to before Ramadan comes in to improve your mental energy levels, inshallah. So what space and what action do you intend to take? We would love to hear from you. So pause this video now, have a think and drop that in the chat roll below. Okay, let's now talk about the third tool for improving your mental energy levels going into Ramadan. And that is your social support network. So we spoke about your physical environment in the last point, and now we're going to be focusing on your social environment. You know, your social support network is really important because a lot of people get quickly mentally drained and fatigued, and they even give up on their goals more easily when they feel like they're working on their goals by themselves, when they feel like they're going through life alone, where they feel like they don't have those important connections with people who are on the same journey as them or who have achieved the things that they want to achieve. Because it's really important to us to have human beings around us who we feel that we can get encouragement from, we can get advice or assistance from when we experience our fears and struggles and failures. People who can help us get back onto our feet, who can help us to grow, who can help us to meaningfully celebrate our wins with us. All of this keeps us mentally going. And you know, if you look into the Quran, we find that our amazing role models, like Prophet Musa alayhi salam, like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we see that building that strong support network was paramount to their mental energy levels and what they were able to achieve. So for example, if you look at the story of Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, when he was gifted with prophethood, one of the first things that he did was to actually ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the assistance of his brother Harun, right? Who became a prophet as well. And if you look at Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you find that when he received revelation, he ran immediately where? To his wife Khadija, right? And even then she took him to her cousin Waraqa, subhanallah. And in all these cases, it was to mentally energize them for their journeys ahead, right? Now, I know some people might be thinking, well, what if I'm not fortunate enough to have a really great support system? Well, the truth is that these kind of positive and supportive connections with people, they hardly ever happen by chance. We don't just bump into these people. We have to consciously reach out and make an effort, inshallah. You can try that offline by searching for any coffee mornings that might take place at your local masjid, for example, or activities that might be going on at your local community centers where you live that you might have an interest in. Maybe you could try online too. You can search for some Facebook groups or some online organizations that might share the same interests, right? The members might share the same values as you. Maybe you could even ask around from the sisters or people that you know of any active WhatsApp groups that you can be part of, for instance. And while you're actively participating in discussions and activities and different programs, inshallah, it's likely that you will discover a few like-minded people that you can make good, positive relationships with. And please never underestimate the power of dua. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you people and connections in your life that are going to help you in your deen and your dunya, inshallah. And saying that, don't forget that you are now part of an extraordinary group of Muslims who are consistently working on bettering themselves through the Quran. You are a valued member of the Quran growth community, alhamdulillah. So please be sure to make use of this opportunity by getting involved in our community. Participate in the chat roll down below. Engage in those Facebook groups, inshallah. It's an honor to have you here with us. Okay, so I want you to now pause this video here and list down 3 action steps you can take within the next 24 hours to help you move forward in growing your tribe. Have a think and let me know in the chat roll down below. For you, will you be introducing yourself at last on the Facebook group that we have? Will you be directly engaging with people on there somehow? Will you Google some local activities at your mosque? Tell me what you would like to do, inshallah. I'd love to know what plans you have. Okay, so let's now move on to the last section of today's training, where we're going to be talking about how to generate greater levels of physical energy for ourselves. And this is a big one because Ramadan clearly puts our bodies through a lot of physical change. What's actually outside a lot of our comfort zones, right? We're eating a lot less while still going through the physical motions of our busy lives. We're sleeping a lot less while we're trying to increase our ibadat, like going to Taraweeh prayers and Tahajjud Salah. And you know, for many of us who are last minute people, our bodies are forced to make this change practically overnight without much training. And so as we do this for an extensive period of time as well, it's pretty intense, right? And as I touched on at the start, sadly, a lot of people during this month, they think that they can just try to push through their physical exhaustion, just using their mental and their emotional strength alone. They think it's a matter of mind over body. So they force themselves to just do it. When the truth is that this is not sustainable. It isn't healthy, it doesn't feel good, and it also compromises the quality of our ibadah, right? Where we're favoring the quantity as opposed to the quality of our good deeds. A far more better and more effective approach would have actually been to consciously take care of our bodies instead, so that we can stay energized, inshallah, and make the most of this month. Now, there are a lot of things that I would have loved to have spoken about from this standpoint of generating physical energy, like our nutrition and hydration, for example, like our movement and our sleep, especially since the insights given on these topics within the Quran, believe it or not, are absolutely incredible. Yes, the Quran talks about these subjects too, but since I know that everyone's different lifestyles and circumstances will predominantly influence how much they can sleep, whether they can nap or not, for example, even what kind of meals we might have access to. So I thought instead what I would do is share with you here my number one tool, my go-to tool that I use several times every single day that alhamdulillah allows me to generate the energy that I need regardless of my food intake, my water, my sleep, or my movement that day. It helps me to sustain the energy I need on demand to get what I need done. Whether it's the energy to film a video like this at 2 o'clock in the morning, whether it's to run around the park with my kids when I've only been able to grab a cup of tea that morning for breakfast, or for me to be able to have a series of coaching sessions with my clients back to back for a few hours while I'm staying stationary on a chair. Now, please, 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 do not get me wrong. It is a must that you ensure that you do your utmost best during Ramadan to eat food that is full of nutrition, right? Avoiding those foods that are high in sugar, trans fat, MSG, for example, to keep yourself hydrated as well with a lot of water, to make sure that you're getting your average 7-8 hours of sleep every day, and to get some basic movement, right? Even if it's just a brisk walk in every day. So please don't neglect these basics in Ramadan, okay? I just know that we don't always get to live out the ideals every single day because life happens. So sometimes, for example, when your child is sick and you're up all night taking care of them, out of exhaustion, sometimes you might miss suhoor. Or if one day you had to travel from one place to another and the only available place to break your fast on the motorway was a fast food restaurant, for example. Or for you, maybe it was your turn to host iftar for all of the family and you ended up spending so much more time than you anticipated in the kitchen that you weren't able to go for that walk that you usually do. And this tool will be able to help you out on those kind of days too. And this is a tool that I like to call my 50-10 rule. Now, to understand the benefit and the value of this tool, I want to begin by sharing with you an analogy. And that's an analogy of a racing car. Now, a racing car is built very powerfully to exert a lot of energy and speed, right? And yet, although it's built with that capacity to complete all the necessary laps of a race circuit during a race, what's really interesting for anyone who's ever watched a Formula One race is that you'll notice that despite that capacity, the drivers, they regularly take pit stops during a race, don't they? And they do this in order to tune the car, in order to take care of the condition of it, because that way it can actually go for longer and faster, essentially giving it a better chance to win the race. So similarly, with this 50-10 rule, it's essentially a practice of consciously injecting and carving out small amounts of consistent time throughout your day to recharge and power up. So that just like the racing cars, we can maintain consistent high performance to make the most of our days during Ramadan, inshallah. Now, it's called the 50-10 rule because after every 50 minutes of your waking day, you consciously give yourself a 10-minute break or energizer to prevent you from burning out. Now, some people might struggle with this a little bit only because sadly, our society has conditioned us in such a way where we view these integral moments of rest and revitalization as a luxury instead. That it's a reward that we should only grant ourselves the privilege of at the end when we've actually achieved something big. Instead of as a necessary part of the process, as a way to move forward more energized and balanced. I know I was one of those people before, subhanAllah. Okay, so how does this practically work? Well, I have a very simple smartwatch. You can use your phone or any timer in your house. And I set an alarm for 50 minutes. And I do it from the time I wake up in the morning. And then I just go about my daily routine and schedules. And once that 50-minute alarm goes off, I stop immediately, whatever it is I'm doing. And I make sure that I stand up and I start to gently shake it out. I start to shake my arms and legs to release all of my tension. And then I start gently bouncing on the spot as well, changing my physiology, waking my body up. Because remember as well that motion creates emotion, right? And that's why you'll actually, interestingly, never find someone who's jumping up and down on a trampoline, for example, or someone in a theme park where their bodies are being flung around in ways they don't usually use their body, typically feeling really emotionally sad or down, right? Or lacking any energy. And in the same way, you don't find someone who's been sitting at their desk with their head slumped into their arms, stationary for a long period of time, feeling very alive and energetic. Physiology is really, really important. And so when I've done this for 1 or 2 minutes, what I like to do as well is something called Qigong. So this is basically where you're just activating the nerve cells on your skin. And that process also gets your lymph moving around your body, getting things generated. You're activating your lung system. So a lot of benefits, inshallah. A great way to energize. And it's really, really simple. You just need to cup your hands and you just start at your ankle and you're basically patting your skin all the way up, about 1 inch or to 1.5 inches at a time. You do that from the bottom of your ankle all the way up to your leg. You're doing it all on the left side as well. You're doing the back, the bottom of your back as well. You're patting it. You're doing all your side, your right hand side, your left hand side. You then start moving on to your arms and you're doing it all the way up. And you're doing it on your left side as well. And then you can also do some gentle taps on your head as well, inshallah. Once I've done that, I always like to activate my breath during my energizing routine too. Just making sure I'm getting all that oxygen flowing throughout my body. I personally think that the breath is an amazing superpower that unfortunately is the most overlooked, undervalued, and unconsciously underused tool that we have. Even though we unconsciously take an average of 25,000 breaths per day, subhanAllah. Because not only has certain breathwork practices been proven to help you regulate your nervous system, release trauma, and help you to emotionally heal, not only has certain breathwork exercises been proven to put you into theta brainwave states where you can subconsciously reprogram your belief systems and psychologically heal. Not only has certain breathwork techniques been proven to resolve physical ailments and conditions of the body too, subhanAllah, but it can also be used as a very powerful tool to energize you as well. And you can actually start doing that in less than 30 seconds, subhanAllah. You know, a lot of people don't know that your breath is actually the only function of your entire autonomic nervous system that we have any control of. Yet, subhanAllah, when we control and manipulate the breath, we can actually directly control all of those automatic bodily functions that we normally wouldn't be able to do otherwise, like our heart rate, like our blood pressure, like our digestion, for example. Okay, so what type of breathwork techniques can you use then to energize you, to upregulate you? Well, instead of me explaining the mechanics, what I've actually done is added an audio clip for you in your action journal below, inshallah, that you can download, which you can practically try out and utilize as part of your 50-10 practice, inshallah. So just to let you know, in that clip, there is no music. It's just a drum being used in the background. And in that breathwork technique I've shared, you use progressively quicker and shorter breaths and some breath holds as well. So for some of you trying this for the first time, you might feel a little bit lightheaded when you do it. So please make sure that you are seated when you try it, inshallah. Okay, for me, I like to close my eyes while I'm doing my whole breathwork routine. And that's because many people don't know that a lot of neurological fatigue that we have is actually created by visual fatigue. And that's why it is a really terrible idea when you're trying to take a break to actually go on your phone and scroll through WhatsApp, social media, or your emails, because that is not resting. You're only kicking your mind into overdrive. You know, subhanAllah, engaging with the breath is something that is a very spiritual matter. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us, for example, that he breathed into, that he blew into Adam of his spirit, right? نفخت فيه من روحي, and how Adam became this creation of consciousness as a result. The fact that the breath reminds us, for example, that nothing belongs to us, that even the gift of the breath given to us, which we take in, it must be given back and returned to Allah, hence we breathe it out, subhanAllah. And because there's so many associations like this between the breath and our spirituality, I like to actually keep my eyes shut after that energizing breathwork practice, just to ground myself for that moment. And I also like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment for giving me life. And I also like to take a moment while I have my eyes shut to renew my intentions as well, for whatever it was that I was engaged in when my alarm went off that I'm going to be going back to, or for whatever new thing I'm about to perhaps start after that 10 minutes is finished. And this just really allows me to re-engage or to move to new tasks, not just in a more energized state, but with more shukr and ikhlas as well, inshallah. And then I simply open my eyes, set another 50 minutes on my alarm, and I get back to my daily tasks before I stop again when that alarm goes off for another 10 minutes. And I simply keep doing that, so on and so forth throughout the rest of my day. Very simple, right? But very powerful, subhanAllah. Now, if you find that you come to your 10-minute energizers feeling highly anxious and emotionally mobilized from maybe something that's happened before it, in that case, yes, I would still recommend that you shake it out and that you move your body in a way to change your state, inshallah. But in regards specifically to the breath work, I would instead recommend that you use breathwork exercises that either bring you back into balance or that actually down-regulate you first before you try to positively energize yourself. And I've actually given you as a type of bonus in your action journal, inshallah, some more breathwork techniques that can help you do just that. Now, the great thing is that with these pockets of time, using this 50-10 rule, you can actually find whatever practices best help you to up your energy levels to include in it. So you can customize this. So maybe for you, it includes taking a brisk walk up and down the garden. Or maybe for you, it's going and inhaling some essential oils to help you stay energized, like peppermint or orange or eucalyptus, for example. They're all really, really great. It's completely up to you. And what's really good is that this is a practice you can use in some shape or form anywhere, whether it's in your home, your work, your car. And it's something as well that is fun that you can get your kids involved in too. You know, my kids know my routine. So when they hear my alarm go off, sometimes they could be playing Lego in another room and they'll come running in and they will join me. They will copy me. They will join me because they think it's absolutely hilarious that I'm jumping up and down. So please stop grinding throughout your entire day non-stop only to burn out later and somehow hope it will just wear off. Instead, begin consciously choosing to have these regular moments where you can release tension, where you can reconnect with your heart, you can amplify your energy, inshallah, all by strategically utilizing your body in using this 50-10 rule. Okay, so why not let me know here in the chat roll down below, how do you plan on utilizing this 50-10 rule? What practices or tools are you most excited about making part of your energizing routine for yourself, inshallah? I would love to hear your exciting ideas and plans. Right, so there you have it, Quranic strategies and tools I remind myself of and that I like to focus on when attempting to take care of my physical, mental, and emotional energy so that I can stay charged and vibrant and present throughout the days of Ramadan. You know, I want you to know that your enthusiastic participation throughout this challenge is what really energizes me and my team. So please keep going. Tell me down in the chat roll below, which of the tools that I shared today was your favorite? And what was your best takeaway from today's session? Please do vote now in the chat roll. Okay, with that said, be sure to also download your action journal today because that will give you more insights and better elaborate on some of the points that we talked about today and help you set up some helpful habits and routines around them, inshallah. And if you enjoyed and benefited from today's session, then please do tell your friends and family about this challenge. Get them to sign up and get involved. It is not too late. And with anything that you're sharing from this challenge online, don't forget to use that hashtag RTC so that we can find you, inshallah, and we can celebrate you with some special gifts. Okay, so I cannot wait to join you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. British time, inshallah, where we're going to be tackling that impactful, but highly misunderstood topic of productivity, inshallah. Because if you cannot develop your capacity to stay motivated on track and disciplined enough to get what you need done, if you can't effectively minimize those distractions around you while maintaining your priorities, and if you can't do all of that in a way that's not just effective but enjoyable, then you're really going to miss out on making that radical change that you want to experience this Ramadan. So be sure not to miss out on that, inshallah, where I'm going to share with you some more powerful Quranic secrets to unlock your productivity. But until then, take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.